Thank you. I now call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order at 7:07 p.m. Please call the roll.
Ms. Pearson,
Present.
Mr. Rollins, Mr. Scrivano,
Here.
Mrs. McCulloch,
Here.
Mr. Siegel,
Here.
Mr. Connor,
Here.
Ms. Stanford.
Here.
With 7 present, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll now take a moment of silence to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. As we start each board meeting, it bears reminding that the mission of Rockford Public Schools is to collaboratively engage all students in a first-class education for a changing world. And before we go any further, I'd like to thank Connor, who's working behind the scenes to produce the board's broadcast via Zoom and YouTube and Comcast Channel 20. So great job, Connor, as always. We will now go ahead with staff recognitions. I think, Mr. Dotson, are you doing the student recognitions? No? Do we have any? Okay, all right. Sorry?
Earl, we have the Scholastic Art and Writing Competition winners on the agenda. Was that an...
All right. Okay. So let's go ahead then with, and if we need to jump back, we will to that, with the petition and communications portion of our meeting where we invite the public to make comments. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution guarantees the rights of citizens to petition their government, as well as provides for freedom of speech. Also, the Illinois School Code requires that there be a time at regular and special meetings for public comment. Thus, we are following those mandates during this petitions and communication portion of our agenda. According to Board Policy 2.230, the public comments portion of the meeting is limited to a total of 30 minutes. The board will not respond to comments at this time. If it is appropriate, you'll be contacted in a timely manner by staff in response to your questions. In order to allow sufficient time for the business of the board and to conduct our meetings in an efficient and effective manner, we are requesting that you comply with the guidelines that are posted, and each speaker will be allowed no more than 2 minutes to address the board. It's not appropriate to address individual board members or individual administrators or discuss matters that would otherwise be confidential in such open meetings. We have 4 speakers for tonight, so I will call 2 at a time, and the first one, we're going to do the two in-person ones first and then the 2 Zoom ones after that. So we have a clock on the wall to help you with your 2-minute timing. If you go over, I'll let you know. And we thank you for your interest and cooperation with our guidelines. So Mary Thiessen is our first speaker, who will be followed by Trevor Christopher. So Mary, are you here? Want to come up to the mic up here and hit the button there and speak directly into the microphone nice and loud? It's hard with masks on. Okay. Hit the button until the red light comes on. There it goes. You can, and if you need, Mary, if you need to move the mic down closer, you go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. In my 2 minutes, is it included introducing myself so you know
Yes.
who I am?
Yeah, total time.
Oh, that's going to be really fast.
Okay.
Okay, my name is Mary Tyson. I'm a graduate of Marquette University, a math major. I have the honor of having the Master Teacher Award from the state of Illinois, Award in Excellence from IMSA, and I served for 25 years on the Math Advisory Committee to the Illinois State Board of Education. I am here because I'm very concerned about what's going on in math, especially at the freshman level in the high school. Okay, I've taught for 59 years. Sorry about that. But I have trouble not doing that. And I've been tutoring a young man, and I thought, okay, I can follow what he's doing. I started several weeks before school started. I got him ready, covered things at Eisenhower that he had trouble with, had him all ready to solve two-step equations, right? So we start. The first day he's working on the computer. He gets 10 of these, 10 points apiece. We have 10. He had them all right, but the machine marked one wrong. I thought, okay, let's see what happens next time. 10 more, 3 marked wrong. He had the correct answers. I said, you have to say something to the teacher. We can prove these are right because we can check them. Nothing happened. I called school. Several days passed, and I said to him, what happened? He said, I got 40 points back. I'm going, okay, what's going on? Is what you bought from some company doesn't know how to work the problems? Okay, as it goes on, time flies, it's going, okay. After Christmas, back to the same thing. And this time, they were having problems with powers that were negative. Okay, all right, this is not going well. Number 2, the kids do not turn in any homework, so how do the teachers know exactly who's doing all this? Number 3, by now, remember I serve on the state board. Okay, they should have done multiplying binomials, they should have done factoring, they should have done solving equations with 2 unknowns by graphing. None of this has been done. No word problems, no geometry. And right now, they seem to be stuck on the slope equation of a line, improving and getting another equation, which is parallel or perpendicular, for 3 weeks.
Okay. Thank you, Mary. I'm sorry your time is up. So I'm going to ask Trevor Christopher now to come to the microphone.
Good evening. My name is Trevor Christopher, and I serve as one of the 4 black teachers at East. I am a science educator who was employed by RPS at the start of the school year and at the rise of the pandemic. Sadly, during this time, several immediate family members were tested positive for COVID-19, and 1 succumbed and died. As a veteran teacher new to RPS, almost immediately, it was clear that my teaching style and cultural diversity were at odds with East's way of operations. For example, during my post-observation conference on October 12th, I raised the issue with my supervisor about her disrespectful way of addressing me. She disagreed with my interpretation of her behaviors, and that's where the lack of administrative support, targeting, and unfair rating began. And though I repeatedly requested assistance about how to improve my performance, none was ever afforded me, not even a plan of corrective action. Hence, it was impossible for me to be successful from the very start. A careful review of my observations will reveal that statements entered on my first observations were distorted, resulting in needs improvement ratings that subsequently carried over into all successive observations, including my summative evaluation on 112, where I was informed that I was being non-renewed, and which occurred exactly 1 week following my final formal observation. Hence, once again, I was not afforded the time to demonstrate improvement. Adding insult to injury, on Wednesday, 2/24, my principal, in the presence of my 4th hour students and another colleague, presented me with a copy of my open letter of termination. I felt humiliated and professionally disrespected. Undaunted, I stand before you as a passionate and committed teacher who, in spite of not being supported and having to endure duress, I remain undeterred in my commitment to the students, community, and district. A district in dire need of more black and brown faces in its educational system. And I ask you, the members of this board, to afford me the opportunity to continue to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. Okay, now we'll go to our remote speakers. Shavina Baker, are you there?
I am here.
Okay. You may start.
Good evening, everyone. Happy Women's History Month. My name is Shavina Baker, and I am the principal at Jackson Charter School. I wanted to take this opportunity to speak on behalf of my school, as I want to continue the partnership with RPS, and I didn't want too much time to go without at least checking in with the district to give you just some updates about our school since the pandemic last March. So I will be very brief. Again, this is just an opportunity to just give you some information about the school and how we're doing. We are doing an synchronous model of learning with all students, where both online and in-person students are learning together. It has been going very well. Our school is proud to report that there have been minimal cases of COVID in our building, a total of 3, which all occurred when we went from online to in-person after the winter break. We have about 70% of our students who are now currently in the building all 5 days a week, and about 30% of our population that's learning in that synchronous model online. So what does that mean for students? That means that any student that is receiving additional or special services, such as SEL support or special education support, are receiving their minutes, as well as instruction during the 8 to 4 time period. We have a huge focus currently on SEL support, because we know that our students are struggling with not just academics, but also social emotional support. So as far as our enrollment and our ADA, we stay about above 85% or more in average daily attendance. And we do have a partnership with the ROE to address all of our chronically truant students. We are currently evaluating all of our teachers on a regular basis with weekly walkthroughs, as well as formal observations using the Danielson framework. I am happy to report that the partnership for our Illinois Empower partnership, with the designation that we currently have, we have partnered with NIU STEAM, and all of our teachers are receiving.
Know that your time is up, but do you want to make a final comment?
Like I said, just wanted to touch base with the district to just let you know how the school is doing, and wanting to obviously continue that partnership and make sure that we have a platform to share information.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Sophia Buchanan. Is she there? Sophia?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
We don't see you. But...
My name is Sophia Buchanan. I am the Education Committee Chairperson for the NAACP. I am reaching out to you all in support of, I am reaching out to you all in support of Mr. Trevor Christopher's reconsideration for his contract to be renewed. I have emailed the board in reference to getting some additional information as to what steps you all have taken to reconsider his termination. I am also asking for you all to respond, and also if the member for his school area could also respond to give me some more intel as far as what steps you are taking.
Okay. Thank you for being here. We will now move on to board member comments. Are there any board member comments at this time?
Can I do?
Go ahead, Ms. McCullough.
Okay, so I don't know, and by the way, the video stream is not of the boardroom. I don't know how many of our board members and our audience and administrators, everybody else, use Amazon. I would guess that there's a large percentage. Today I learned, and I don't know if any of you use Amazon Smile, which gives a percentage of your purchases, of actually a 0.5% of your purchases toward a charity. And today I was online and looking through some of the charities and found out that one of the charities that you can designate to receive that money is Rockford Promise. So I wanted to bring it to everyone's attention. Maybe y'all knew this, I did not, but hopefully even if one more person signs up, but all it is using Amazon Smile, and you choose, they give you an opportunity to choose a charity, and Rockford Promise is on there. So that's where my money's going from now on, my 0.5, sadly more than I need to, but I hope others would be willing to do as well.
Thank you. Any other board member comments at this time? Okay. If not, we will now move on to our next agenda item, which is the superintendent's report. Dr. O'Hara.
Thank you, Mr. Scrivano. And I did want to let the community know that we are looking for 2 RPS seniors to take part in the RAM scholarship for Rockford University teachers that we're working on. Earl Dotson Jr. and I, the Chief of Communications, through the Masonic Lodge, and I and my family have come up with a matching fund to target 2 RAM scholars. We were able to find 2 last year to take part in the Rockford University pathway. This ends up being a full tuition scholarship to Rockford University for 4 years. And then upon entrance in the district, a master's degree program. We are still looking for an applicant or 2 for the upcoming year. So if anyone is out there and has a student that might be interested in this RAM scholarship, we would encourage the students to apply. I have put the word out with principals, but I'm looking to boost the signal. I think in light of the loss of Chris Hodge, who was an outstanding teaching candidate, who was a sophomore in the program, which was a tragic loss. We are hopeful that we are able to honor his memory by finding some additional students who would consider going into the profession. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go on now on to reports and action items that proceeded through the Internal-External Stakeholder Relations Committee. Mr. Siegel, are there any follow-ups?
There are no follow-ups from the Internal-External Stakeholders Committee.
Okay.
But due to my having not seen that the recognitions were in a different place, I completely missed this a few moments ago, and I apologize. Okay. But we do wish to recognize the Scholastic Art and Writing Competition winners. Students from Auburn, Jefferson, and Roosevelt High Schools were recently named winners in the 2021 Scholastic Art and Writing Competition. The following students received awards in one of 3 categories: Gold Key or Silver Key Award winners, plus honorable mention. The top 10 to 15% of all entries received honorable mention. From Auburn High School, Jacqueline Solis, and from Jefferson High School, Belinda Martinez and Michelle Perez. Silver Key Awards are given to the top 7 to 10% of all entries. From Auburn High School, Delilah Rodriguez and Yeva Sorantes, and from Roosevelt, Liberty Schaefer. Gold Key Awards are given to the top 5 to 7% of all entries. All Gold Key works are forwarded to the New York City to compete for inclusion in the National Scholastic Art and Writing Exhibition. Congratulations to following Gold Key Award winners, all from Jefferson High School: Arturo Carrillo, Haley Greenwald, and Chizia Richardson Norman. Chizia received 3 Gold Key Awards. Each of these award winners were invited to an online Scholastic celebration that premiered on Sunday, March 7th. Congratulations to these students for their hard work and dedication, and congratulations to their teachers and their families for supporting them.
Okay, our next item is the Performance and Monitoring Committee. Mrs. McCulloch, any follow-up items on from the Committee of the Whole regarding Performance Monitoring Committee?
I do, Ken. Thank you. There's been an addition, item 10I. If you haven't looked at it yet, we didn't talk about that last time because this is a clinic or an opportunity to waive fees for the use of Ellis for a clinic this Saturday. The Winnebago County Health Department is coordinating this clinic. It is with 1,000 vaccines, trying to serve the community, the at-risk community. They will be Johnson & Johnson, so there's just one time in and one time out. They won't have to do follow-up. The biggest part of this, Walgreens will be running the clinic, but the churches in the area have collaborated to bring the community together and so it's effort on behalf of everybody. The fee waiver is $3,700, and I think it's just a totally worthwhile cause. And there may or may not be another one coming up, but they put this one together fairly quickly, and I'm excited with the people who are volunteering to help. I think some of our nurses are stepping up to volunteer as well as people from Walgreens in the county. That's my first follow-up. My second one is we are voting tonight on the contract with the Park District for summer programs. And we're also voting on ombudsman tonight. Both of those are in our consent agenda. I asked Mrs. Detman to put together a couple slides, and if she wants to step up, and we can get those up on the screen, which talk a little bit about, kind of give some perspective to the summer program, because we divided last time's presentation between external stakeholder and performance monitoring. And what I realized later was that Park District isn't the only group that will be voting to fund for some of the summer program with our Title I money. And so just as we did with the Title I money in the schools where they get the menu and get to choose, going forward, the district will provide us the whole package of who's who and how much. Ms. Detman, do you want to go ahead and just speak for a minute on these slides since you put them together?
Sure.
Or thank you.
Yes, I'm all set. Thank you. So Ms. McCulloch asked me to come back with a little bit more detail since we do have a few contracts that are going to be coming for your review so that you can see kind of overall big picture, how do these individual contracts contribute to our overall summer approach. The second part of this presentation helps to kind of clarify what is happening for credit recovery and why we need so many more robust opportunities for students to find their way back to recover some credits. So I was asked to present on both, and I've tied them together into one presentation. So first, and it's difficult to, I kind of missed that screen over there. First, just a review of what we are doing over the summer. So what is RPS, what is community, and where are we collaborating? RPS has several programs, just as we do every summer. The first is Camp No Fly, or Camp No Other Future Like Yours. That begins on Tuesday, July 6th and runs through Friday, July 30th. It is 19 days, and it is eligible for students in grades K through 7 currently. We also have a suite of retreats, and I shared some of that information with you last week in my report. Those are week-long, high-interest experiences for students, and that is for students K through 12. We also have a robust credit recovery and ELO opportunity, which I will share with you in a little bit. We also have Step Up for our 8th to 9th grade transitions. I'll go into more detail on that in a little bit as well. And then additionally, our Early Childhood Summer School. Additionally, which I don't have named on this slide, is our annual ESY, or Extended School Year for Special Education students, which we do every year. On the right side of the slide is just a sampling of some of the partners that we've brought to the table over the past several weeks to do some co-design in kind of more collaborative spaces over the summer. And so here's what that looks like. In terms of board action, you're going to be seeing 4 contracts total between this board meeting and our next board meeting. The largest is with the Rockford Park District at $582,000. They're our largest partner on an annual basis. And that is a combination of support with camp and our retreats. We also have some targeted retreats with Discovery Center, Burpee, and Severson Dells. On the community side of things, there's a few things that we're doing differently this year. First, as I said last time, we are embedding RPS teachers into community centers to provide small group or one-to-one skill building support in reading and math and inquiry, exploring questions, being curious about the world. We are removing barriers for transportation as much as possible. We're doing that work now. We're in that problem solving now to help families participate in both camp and a community center program. We also are extending RPS programming by embedding community partners at the Auburn campus, and we're developing that concept now so that families can have a safe place for their children to learn from 7:30 in the morning all the way through till 6 p.m. if that's what they need. And then collaborating together to enroll students in a variety of programs. So our friends at the Boys and Girls Club, for example, or the YMCA or the Park District have really close relationships with the families that they serve in their neighborhoods. And we're going to be working together to make sure that we have a chance to enroll students into all the seats that we have available this year. We also have some real issues for our students that are a result of this pandemic. Many of our students are struggling. They're struggling with remote learning. They're struggling with life in the pandemic. Many of our students' families have been impacted in various ways. And as a result, many of our students have found that it's really, really hard to keep up with their schoolwork. And I showed you some data last time that showed that it impacts our African American and Latinx students more disproportionately than our white students. So this is a problem whose data we need to know and understand well so that we can actively, proactively plan and provide as many open doors and on-ramps back into getting on track for all of our students as possible. We know that our high school students have lost about 8,376 credits from the fall of 2020, and that is compounded by 2,703 in the spring of 2020. For comparison, you can see the numbers there from the fall of 2019. That's a 28.8% increase in the number of credits that need to be recovered. So we have to understand that the traditional number of seats will not be enough, and we need to have a more robust approach. We have a deadline to make up ELOs, or extended learning opportunities, from spring 2020 and fall 2020 by March 19th. Our counselors understand that is a date that's kind of our deadline for making them up. At that point in time, they're going to turn their attention into enrolling students, referring students for Roosevelt and ILC. You also have the Ombudsman contract up for approval on the board agenda tonight. Roosevelt is preparing for a 25 to 30% increase in enrollment in the month of April. Once we reach their threshold of 600 students, a waitlist will be created. Top priority students will, of course, be students who are the most deficient in credits and need additional support catching up. They are proactively working with counselors right now. There's a Zoom presentation for Auburn families that will be happening this week. They'll be doing that for all families across the district in coordination with our zone home schools. We've also quadrupled our capacity for traditional summer credit recovery, and we've expanded it to 2 locations pending final approvals, and that's at Roosevelt and Jefferson with an AM and a PM session so that time and transportation are not barriers. We've also determined that credit recovery can happen in a competency-based model, i.e., what we do with traditional summer school, but students could also choose self-paced with coaching support. That may be a more appropriate option for some students. Or, as I mentioned before, we have some employers that are on board with providing time and space for students to have their RPS teacher join them at the work site to support them in their credit recovery. We also are providing credit recovery at no cost to families and will include transportation and food as well. So we are removing as many barriers as possible to ensure a continuity of learning for students. We understand that for many of our students who are not just behind 1 credit, but 3 or 4 or more, it may feel incredibly overwhelming. And this is a time when all of us that have any teenagers in our lives, whether they are nieces, nephews, cousins, brothers, sisters, neighbors, church friends, whatever the relationship may be, that every adult really needs to kind of heed this as a call to action, that our students need our support getting back on track, and that every door is an open door to getting back on track to your goals and getting ready for the next step and whatever your next step is after high school. We have a compounded issue here with middle school, and this is why learning continuity is so critical. We want to have as few interruptions as possible for our children, especially as we welcome them back, kind of in our post-vaccination, post-pandemic world. We have not only skills to recover, but also relationships to build for some students who have really had a hard time connecting this year. I shared the data from our fall numbers in high school, and here in middle school you can see we have a 275% increase with 9,113 failing grades from the fall of 2020. Our middle school students are struggling. Students have a lot of enrollment options, though, and ways, open doors, on-ramps to come kind of back in and get back on track. Students in middle school are eligible for all of our retreats, which begin early June and end late August. They're eligible for Camp No Fly for grades 6 and 7. And they're eligible for small group and one-on-one tutoring and participating community centers. We also have 8th grade students that will be invited to participate in our Step Up program. We have always run Step Up for the last, 6 or 7 years, which is a transitional program for our 8th graders who have demonstrated that they're struggling to connect in school as 8th graders. We want to give them that boost before their 9th grade year. This year we've expanded it beyond Roosevelt, and in fact it's going to happen in all 4 home schools. That means that 8th graders coming in will have an opportunity in advance of the school year to start forming relationships, to have a boost in their skills in ELA and in math, and then also as an advisory period, so with a counselor to start forming relationships. We have the opportunity there for them to navigate school, and also we've prioritized those seats for students who are struggling to remain connected and successful this year. We will select those students through a partnership between the 8th grade counselor and assistant principal and the 9th grade counselor and assistant principal, and we call that a warm handoff, so that at the Step Up program, the students are able to see staff from their old school and their new school to get ready for the school year and have a more successful transition. And that ends my presentation. I would take any questions that you might have.
When will that Step Up program be?
That will be running in August.
Is it a day or a few hours? Or?
It is a 3-week program.
Oh, is it? Okay. All right.
Yes. I want to say 3, potentially 4.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Rollins?
So I guess a couple of questions. So
Sure.
do we know like how many, are these all core courses, or do we know how many of these are core courses?
This is the total number. We have it listed by course. We do have, exact numbers for exact courses, but I don't have all of that committed to memory yet.
Are we going to prioritize, I assume, the core courses in credit recovery?
Yes.
Yes, I'm just going to ask the questions. I didn't realize that the difference was that great between the high school and middle school. I'd seen some raw numbers. Really, this is more of a middle school problem. If kids don't get the credit recovery, I was going to ask the question, are we moving them up?
We have to take we always look at, in terms of grade level changes, we always look at that on a student by student basis, looking at holistically what's in their best interest. What I will say is that we're not alone in understanding, and districts across the nation are understanding this now, that a really strong and robust multi-tiered system of support is required, so that we're truly understanding the interventions and what's working and not working for each individual student.
Okay. That was kind of a non-answer, and my guess would be
case by case.
Case by case. I'll make a prediction that you're going to move them all up. So we're going to have a bunch of kids starting ninth grade, starting high school, not really ready for high school.
8th grade students are in the step-up program, and they have to successfully complete that in order to move forward.
Okay? And we will make sure that they successfully complete it, and if they don't move up?
We do on a regular basis. There's entrance and exit
Roosevelt.
criteria for transitioning in the step-up program. Some of our freshmen we find are more successful in a very small environment at Roosevelt, and they start there until they're ready to join their peers in their home school.
But there's a limited number of seats for that, right? Unless you're expanding it.
There are a limited number of seats, yes. But because we're in four, it's hard to know where to speak to. Because we're in 4 schools this year, we're able to offer more seats than we have in the past.
No, I meant for the one where you start them with 9th grade in. It was at Roosevelt. I don't know where we are now, but that program has fairly few seats, correct?
Generally speaking, it's a small program. I think, like all things in the wake of the pandemic, we need to carefully know and understand our data and align our resources effectively that way. So I can't say necessarily what our numbers will be or if they would shift. It would probably depend on the need of our students in that program.
I have one more I was going to ask, and that is, are you anticipating that you'll be doing measurements of the summer programs and how successful or not successful they were?
Yes, we always keep data.
Hitting the mission that you want to get accomplished? Yeah.
Yes, we always keep data, and we're responsible for monitoring our progress as a part of being a grant-funded program. But we also want to monitor our enrollment in our community-wide programs as well.
Goes back to my if you build it, will they come question from last time.
That's our greatest challenge, is if we build it, will we have enough adult staff to run as many seats as we need? And if we build it, will we have enough families taking advantage of these opportunities? We believe they're high value and high impact, and we hope that everyone will start really reaching out and looking for those ways to connect and engage their children.
Any other questions for Ms. Stetman? Denise? Ms. Pearson?
Sure. Thank you. I just have a quick question,
Sure.
and forgive me if you answered it already. So the program doesn't start until you're in 8th grade?
For Step Up, it doesn't start until 8th grade, but 6th and 7th grade students can participate in all the retreats and camp.
So technically, they can get started in their transition as early as 6th grade.
They're two different programs. Our camp and our retreats are summer enrichment and skill building. Step Up is a kind of an intensive program. It's an intervention to support students that need that transition in specifically from 8th grade to 9th grade. But as a parent, I could have my 6th or 7th grade child engaged all summer long.
I guess my concern would be if they're already in 8th grade, that transition, it's a small window from 8th grade to 9th grade. So I was thinking if we could take a more proactive approach in preparing them, because if I understood you correctly, they could start off their freshman year possibly at Roosevelt if there are seats.
It's possible. There's criteria that our team uses to determine if a freshman student would be more successful at Roosevelt first.
Okay, is it possible they would become more successful if we got an earlier start in the transition?
Are you suggesting sort of toward the end of the 8th grade year having students attend Roosevelt? Is that what you mean?
Well, what I'm saying is if there are signs of challenges for transitioning
Yes.
prior to 8th grade,
Yes.
then perhaps we can address it
Yes.
then
That's
so they can have, for lack of a better word, a normal
Yes.
transition to high school.
To high school, yes. And I think that speaks to really the years-long approach that we're going to have and be responsible for in our post-pandemic world. We need to understand, I understand your point now, thank you for clarifying. We need to understand those 6th graders that are struggling now so they don't become the 8th graders that are struggling before their freshman year. And you'll see a couple of different tools that we'll be bringing forward in the wake of the pandemic. One is an academic progress monitoring tool that gives us the ability K-12 to track interventions and really get clear on what's working and not for an individual child. And then the other is an SEL screener, because we'll have not just academic impacts but social emotional as well. So those two systems need to be consistent across our district so that we can do just that. Find that 6th grade child as a 7th grader and really fill them up with all that we have to support them academically and social emotionally as well. Thank you.
Collins?
Sorry, this isn't a question. This is really just a comment for anybody who's listening. I've got a little bit of a firsthand seat to this. I can tell you that the district and teachers and administrators have been bending over backwards, making Herculean efforts to reach kids this year. Teachers have been putting in a lot of time trying to reach kids who don't seem to be engaged, reach their parents. And I won't say that standards have been lowered, but I will say that teachers are under a lot of pressure not to flunk kids this year. If we've got a 275% increase in failing grades for middle school kids, those are kids who just checked out. They have done nothing. And I'm not saying, don't take this as blaming the kids. I'm saying at the beginning of all this, we all kind of said, well, this is going to be an interesting experiment to see how well remote learning works. We have the results from that experiment up on the screen. It's important to get kids back to school. There is a category of kids who, for whatever reasons, cannot or will not engage in learning if they're not in school, in person, with a teacher. Teachers really are important. So I really hope that we will work to get kids back in the schools, or this problem is going to continue to get worse.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rollins. So those three are on tonight's agenda under consent. Again, I didn't ask, I apologize. Did anybody have any questions about the fee waiver for the vaccine clinic at Ellis on Saturday?
Sounds like
Hearing
a good idea
none.
to me.
Okay. And then, of course, the other two would be to support our students with the summer programs and obvious need for those seats at Ombudsman, as many of these students will need opportunities in the fall. We didn't cover at the last meeting the consent agenda for March 30th, which will be coming up at our next board meeting. So I'm going to take a minute just to give you a bird's eye view of what is on there, and then give the board members the opportunity to follow up and read the executive summaries. But I'd wait a little while because none of these have the bids that have come in yet. Or have been registered. Some of them have come in, and I'll explain that to you. There's a lot of construction or facilities work. 9, G, H, and I are all for schools for interior renovations for this summer. 6 schools, Ellis, Risa, Beyer, Rolling Green, Lincoln, and Summerdale. The letter J, 9J, is for masonry work and restoration and repointing at 10 schools. The letter K is for the first floor renovations at the administration center. The letter N is for renovation of Jefferson Track. And the letter P is for asbestos removal at West. Again, those numbers will be populated with the bids when they're received. The other ones from March 30th, the other consent agenda items of interest will be letter L, which is the custodial services. We did, actually that bid packet was opened on the 4th, but the operations team will meet on the 12th to review them. We had, if you remember, there was mention of this, that we broke our schools for custodial care into 2 blocks. There's a block A, which is 20 schools, the operations support center, and Sterling Holly. All that is south of State Street. And then block B is, all the schools are south of State Street. I guess everything is. You're right. And Block B is all north of State Street, 21 schools, the administration building, the Wyeth and Swanson stadiums. That one is different because Swanson Stadium wouldn't be, would it? Yeah, Auburn and Guilford. So, yep. All the firms submitted for both A and B. So they'll be looking at all those and making a determination based a lot on experience, management, stability, management quality, staffing plans, technical strength, operations, policies, pricing. So the and they could be, the bids could be won by one for A and one for B, or one company for both. That again will be on March 30th. We'll have that follow-up. We will also have letter M, the district wellness promotion administrator. That has already been opened as well. There were 3 bidders, but all 3 bidders are going to be given a presentation to the HR department the 11th, which is Thursday, and then they will make a selection. So if anybody has any questions about how that works, we're not just taking lowest bidder, they're actually giving presentations, but I was told that all the bids were very close. So the last one is the E-rate infrastructure, letter O. They're opening that bid on the 10th, which is tomorrow, so I don't have an award, but those are the kind of things on your consent agenda that you'll want to further peruse before the March 30th meeting. So if anybody has questions about those, otherwise, that ends my update.
Okay, any questions for Mrs. McCullough? Okay, thank you, Jude. We'll now move on to the Planning and Development Committee. Mr. Rollins, are there any follow-up items from your committee?
There's no follow-up items. We have under the consent agenda as an action item the fleet vehicle lease agreement, which we discussed at the Committee of the Whole. That's down below under the consent agenda.
Is that it? Okay. Excuse me, I lost my microphone there for a minute. I was asked by 2 of our committee chairs, as we are learning how to function under our new committee structures, there is an interest to find out from all board members what is their preference on how consent updates are given, particularly I think at our meetings and committee meetings. I just kind of want, I think that's really what the question is how should that information be presented? What should be included? What should just be a listing or whatever? So I'm going to open it up to the floor of any one of the board members on what they have thoughts on. I want to ask the 2 committee chairs that talked to me, is that a good summary of what you're looking for? Go ahead, Mrs. McCullough.
Okay. So there's really a question of the vision of the board as to what the reports are from the committee chairs compared to what administration might have as their vision. And I really, as a board member, want to meet the needs of the board without, and try to keep in line. So the real question is, how much do you want? Do you want brevity? Do you want us to not even kind of go through the list and highlight the ones that are coming up? Do you want us to spend some time? We really don't know. The concern is that I think the concern by administration is that we give too much. And so if board members feel like they want to just read it all on their own, which then doesn't open the opportunity for as much conversation, because it's hard to ask questions about something that you haven't been presented the information. So can you help us out?
Anybody
and so
want
we
to
need
go first?
Please feedback from the board.
Okay. Mrs. Pearson.
Thank you. I really appreciate the detailed presentations, especially as a new board member. So the information that you share, that you present, we're able to obtain additional detail, and we can also have conversation. But the presentation, I think, offers additional eyes to see and acknowledge information. So I prefer the detailed presentations, if that answers your question.
Anybody else? Mr. Siegel.
I too generally would prefer a little, the detail in the presentations at the committee of the whole meeting. Once upon a time when we had separate committee meetings, if I saw something that I had questions about with either the education committee or finance, I would either attend or I would check into those meetings online. And then being able to sit in the operations committee meetings, we often had very rich conversation about things that were being presented by the administration or perhaps even an outside vendor. And it feels like two things have been lost in the committee of the whole structure, and that is the more detailed reports that come in. Although I have to say the budget reports, the last two committee of the whole meetings were excellent. I thought those were really thorough and very helpful. The other thing that's kind of gotten lost is a sense of conversation about the things that are being presented. We've had a couple of recent committee of the whole meetings that have gone pretty long, and we've hit the end of our allotted time and felt like there still wasn't that rich conversation that took place at the committee meetings. I realize those committee meetings generally lasted longer than an hour, and it's going to be really tough to pack all of that in, but it does feel like maybe a knowledge retention, and that could very easily just be me, there's a deficit, at least on my part.
Mr. Connor.
Well, a couple things. So I appreciate the request for the detail. The assumption I was always under is that the best place for detail as part of a discussion is the committee of the whole. Does that mean pretty much everybody is good with that as an assumption?
Yep.
So here's what
Mike, could I interrupt? Mike, that is true unless there's too much that you can't get it in your time frame during committee of the whole. For example, I was supposed to cover consent from the 8th and the 30th on that meeting, and there's just no way. That was too much information. Yeah. So I broke it up into two. So sometimes it will come over into a regular board meeting.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt.
So that's all right, and I appreciate the comment. Here's one suggestion is, if we're going to present these, I think that the committee chairs need to come up with a priority order. So in other words, I think the fact that, they're A, B, C, D, and so forth, every item is not as important from my point of view. And I think it's up to the committee chairs to say, here's the order of importance, because if we're going to fall short on discussion, we should have gone through the most important things first. Then the second thing is that, and I absolutely appreciate that we're giving more heads up on what's coming to the next. But I think one of the things is because we do have a lot that comes on those consent agendas. I mean, we might have 10 items or something. And I don't know how realistic it is to go through, all the details. And again, I think related to priority, the second thing is, if something is likely more controversial, and so I'll give you the example, when we went through that discussion about the buses, clearly we had an issue with, delivery, and we needed to spend some time talking about that, as well as the diesel fuel. And so I would put that into the thought process on priority. That if something is likely to be more controversial because it is something that board members would like to speak about, then let's make sure we spend extra time on that. And I would say, as difficult as it is for us to be, relatively close to the time allocations, and again, if one committee thinks they're going to use less, then I think that's perfectly fair. Because I'll just speak for me, because I'm the old guy here, is that after 3 hours in the committee of the whole, I'm going to, that math teacher I saw left, but if I have a chart of time and my attention, that curve goes down at a 45-degree angle. So, and I want to make sure that I pay attention. So I really think that those kinds of guidelines would help us. The other thing I'm going to say is at the board meetings, I truly appreciate that we need to give people a look ahead. But I think one of the things on the look ahead is, again, if we can identify where we think maybe there is more detail that people are going to need, or we anticipate that, or we get questions, that is done as much ahead of time. One of the things I would say is the chairs are doing a good job on the committees, and I would trust the judgment of each chair to say, by and large, you've looked at the detail, and here are the things that I think most of you would be interested in, because that would help me to prioritize. So those are just some of the suggestions I've got.
Mr. Rounds.
I tend to agree with Mr. Connor, and the way I'd kind of phrase it is, if you think back to the consent agendas that we had before we went to this new structure, there are things that we voted on that we would just vote on and nobody ever had any questions about. And one category, for instance, that I think that falls into is all of the IFBs. The IFB is just, we just do an invitation for bids and we award the contract to the lowest responsible bidder. And every once in a while, somebody would have a question about a particular project or a particular IFB. They'd pull it, they'd ask their question, and then we vote on it. I think we can all still do that at the committee of the whole. I don't know that we do need to go through the entire consent agenda line item by line item. And I do think that the committee chairs can exercise a little bit of discretion in saying, here's what I'm going to highlight, and then does anybody have questions about the rest of the consent agenda? That may actually be a little bit better use of our time.
Ms. Stanford.
I agree. I think if you have prepared for the meeting and gone through everything that's in the board docs about whatever we're discussing, then you should have a good idea if you have questions about certain topics or whatever at the time of the committee meeting.
Okay, well, my comments are, for me, it depends on the topic, as to what you decide is kind of like what Mr. Connor was talking about, what's the most critical stuff. I think the discussion, particularly at the committee of the whole, is really important for areas of concerns. And I'll just use the example, the ombudsman thing that, to me, we had a lot of questions about that, and we needed discussion and follow up from Dr. Vosberg on that one. Jude, I really appreciate when you say things like, heads up about this one coming. So I think that's very helpful, because then I know that when I'm doing my weekend prep work for the board meeting, then I will remember that, oh yeah, I need to look at that one, and I'll make sure that I spend more time, reading the attached report from the content. For me, if it's less important and less controversial or whatever, just listing with a little bit of a brief executive summary for me is fine, because then I'm just going to go read about it on board docs anyway. So I hope that was helpful, And Mrs. Holdley, I'm sure, took really good notes on that. Okay.
There is no.
Okay, all right, so, but we've got some ideas, and we're learning, and we're trying to get better, and I appreciate everybody's input, and I hope that helps the chairs a little bit, you know, with how to get their presentations prepared. So, and remember that as time goes on, you know, you might be the next chair of that committee. So you might have to do a little homework too. So any other discussion on that topic? That's all I had. So we can now move on then to the consent portion of our meeting, which includes the items previewed by the board committee chairs during the committee of the whole meeting. And those include, starting on number 10, payroll, accounts payable, purchase orders, the bids for West Middle School pool renovations, West Middle School HVAC upgrades, the Rolling Green School asbestos abatement project, the Summerdale Early Childhood Center asbestos abatement project, the diesel fuel, the Winnebago County Health Department facility rental fee waiver, project search, the recurring contract for grant-funded summer programming, the recurring contract for AT&T phone circuits, recurring contract for Ombudsman ILC. The consent under the Planning and Development Committee was the fleet vehicle lease agreement with Enterprise. Under governance, it was the meeting minutes of February 23rd, contract purchase orders, the revised 21-22 academic calendar, and the Freedom of Information log. Is there a motion and a second to approve these consent items?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor, second by Mr. Rollins. Are there any items, consent items that board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Seeing none, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of the consent items.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins? Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We are now on to the closed session consent items, including the following, starting under number 13, resolution authorizing reclassification of a certified district administrator, the resolution authorizing dismissal of certain non-certified educational support staff, the salary adjustment for non-bargaining employees, the HR organizational report and addendum, and the closed session consent items, including the student discipline. Unless otherwise modified below, the board adopts and accepts the hearing officer's findings and recommendations in the following cases in which students expelled or suspended are prohibited from being on school grounds and school-sponsored activities without the prior written permission of the principal. Student 4373 is expelled for the remainder of this school year, and 3 students have been assigned an EIA. Those are students 8211, 8212, and 8213. Is there a motion and a second to approve the closed session consent items?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Siegel. Are there any closed session consent items that board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Seeing none, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of the closed session consent items.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Abstain.
With 6 yeses, 1 abstained, the motion passes.
Okay. We are now on to number 16, which is the board member action steps or administrator stuff. I didn't write anything down, so hopefully someone has, if we have one. I guess that we need to continue to work on sharing with our committee chairs on how that progress is going and with the reporting of consent items and whatever. So, you know, as I said, we're learning and we're working together, and I appreciate all the collaboration and thought put behind and the efforts of everybody to make those meetings meaningful for everyone. So very helpful. If there are no further comments or agenda recommendations by the board, I will now take a motion and a second to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Siegel. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned at 8:11 p.m.